Devon is situated in the southwest of England and is a vast county with a rich variety of scenery attracting many visitors every year. Scattered along the coast you will find ancient harbours, delightful resorts and dramatic craggy coastlines. Inland among the rolling green valleys are delightful villages full of old world charm, picturesque inns and ancient churches creating a timeless atmosphere of peace and serenity. Exeter is the undisputed capital of the county. It is large enough to attract specialised shops, but small enough to be comfortably cosy. The city has a long history that goes back well before the Romans founded Isca Damnoniorum in about AD 50. The stone wall defences that once surrounded it were built by the Romans, parts of which can be seen today. Exeter has been attacked many times over its history, most notably by William the Conqueror in 1068, who ordered the building of the castle. The Inner Bailey is now occupied by the county court and is unfortunately not open to the public. In 1942, much of the city was reduced to rubble by German bombing, and many of the historic buildings were damaged or destroyed. Much has been carefully rebuilt to preserve its ancient heritage. Exeter's magnificent cathedral dominates the centre of the city. This 850-year-old building, with its two Norman towers, stands majestically in a close, surrounded by shops and houses dating from the 14th century to the present day. The cathedral boasts the tallest bishop's throne in England and the longest stretch of Gothic vaulting in the world. On the west front you will find a magnificent collection of sculptures. It is thought that many of them may be figures from the Old Testament. The cathedral is of great historical importance, and a visit to Exeter is not complete without spending some time in its vicinity. Probably one of the most interesting buildings in the cathedral close is Moll's Coffee House, an Elizabethan timber-framed building with 16th century oak beams. Near to Moll's, down a narrow lane, you will find the Ship Inn. Sir Francis Drake is said to have been a regular customer here on visits to the city. The lane leads out onto the High Street with its many brightly painted buildings. As you look down the street, you will see the Guildhall with its Renaissance architecture, reflecting the wealth of the woolen cloth industry in the Exeter area in the 16th century. At the rear of the building is the entrance to the Guildhall shopping centre, and nestled in the courtyard you will find the tiny St Pancras Church. After walking through the shopping centre, you are confronted by the majestic Royal Albert Memorial Museum and Art Gallery, a marvellous example of Victorian architecture. The museum explores Exeter from prehistory through to the present day, with fascinating and imaginative displays. The art gallery chiefly features local artists and has a varied programme of special and temporary exhibitions. After passing through the gate in the city wall, you enter the beautifully manicured Rougemont Gardens, laid out in the 18th century. At the far end of the garden is the Regency building Rougemont House, which is currently used as a discovery centre. The garden path leads to Castle Street, passing the Castlegate House on its way. A little way down the hill is Roman Gate Passage, an underground tunnel with an exhibition and tour of the conduits built under the city in the Middle Ages to supply clean water to the city from a spring about a mile away. Stepcote Hill, a cobbled medieval way, was until 1778 the main road into Exeter from the west. At the bottom of Stepcote Hill you will find the House That Moved, an attractive wooden framed Tudor building that was strapped together, jacked up and moved on rollers to its present site on West Street to make way for a new road. St Mary's Steps Church can also be found here. It was founded in the 12th century and rebuilt in the 15th. The famous clock, built by Matthew the Miller in about 1620, has various parts which can be seen to move when it strikes the hour. Colleton Crescent is a fine group of Georgian buildings with extensive views across the river to the quay. These fine dwellings were probably owned by some of the wealthy exporters of the period. Exeter's quayside has a unique collection of historic industrial buildings. Many of the structures date from the 16th century and onwards. The impressive early 19th century warehouses and the Custom House, built in 1681, are a reminder of Exeter's former dependence on maritime trade, which was mainly in wool. The fine old warehouses have been converted, and visitors can enjoy antique and craft centres, restaurants and tea rooms. Two sides of the river are linked by a ferry, which is hauled across by pulling on a cable. An interesting way to cross the river. On the side of Western Way you will find remains of the medieval Exe Bridge. It was constructed around 1200 and is one of the earliest long stone bridges in England. The remains of St Edmund's Church form part of the bridge, which was originally about 600 feet long with 18 arches. The roar of Sidmouth's gravel beach at high tide creates a relaxing atmosphere, and the bay stretches out, overlooked by the red sandstone cliffs. The resort has had many important visitors in the past, including the King in 1791 and later Queen Victoria as a young girl. Most of the town was built in the early 19th century and has kept its Georgian and Regency style, which has been sensitively brought up to date. Exmouth is Devon's fourth largest town and is elegantly spaced with parks and squares and an abundant supply of shops. Exeter Road marks the old shoreline, to the left of which all the land has all been reclaimed. The lime tree, surrounded by iron railings, sits on a place known as Mona Island, probably the oldest part of Exmouth. The seafront is blessed with soft golden sand and stretches for 2 miles, the longest beach in either Devon or Cornwall. Opposite the seafront are a host of attractions, including crazy golf and the Great Exmouth 00 Model Railway, the world's largest display of 00 gauge railway. Up to 30 trains can run at once. Dawlish is built on both sides of a pleasant open space called the lawn, which is attractively decorated with flower beds and baskets. Through the middle of this open space runs Dawlish Water, a favourite spot for ducks and black swans, which have been here since 1906. The Strand, with its busy shops, dates back to the beginning of the 19th century, when it consisted almost entirely of boarding houses. The seafront is protected by a high sea wall along which runs the railway. From the jetty you can board the many boats, making trips along the coast to the nearby villages and towns. Dawlish has a wealth of attractions and is well worth a visit. The original pier at Teignmouth was built in the 1860s at a cost of £8,000. It was much longer than the one that stands here today and had a large ballroom and a magic lantern show at the end. This nicely laid out grassed area, known as the Dent, was once a piece of sandy wasteland until the Earl of Devon presented it to the town, and it was developed into an area for recreation and entertainment. This, along with the building of the pier, heightened Teignmouth's popularity. Before the River Tyne spills out into the sea, it opens out, offering shelter and moorings for the many pleasure boats that navigate the harbours and coves along the coast. The mouth of the Tyne is very narrow, causing much excitement as the boats navigate the challenging currents of the changing tides. A ferry across the Tyne to Sheldon has existed since the 13th century. The black and white design on the gunwale is traditional, dating back to Elizabeth I's crossing, and the design replicates the galleons of the period. Sheldon is an attractive village that everybody should visit, especially on a Wednesday, as it's 1785 Day, when members of the village dress up in clothing of the period. A walk to the top of the Ness will give you some superb views of the estuary. Boddicombe Bay below is a sheltered sandy beach, accessed by a winding path or, for a small fee, by the cliff railway. The steeply ascending carriage is counterbalanced by the descending carriage. This is the same principle that the San Francisco streetcars are operated by. At the top are nicely laid out gardens where you can soak up the sea air. At Babbacombe you will find the unforgettable model village, which has been here for more than 37 years. It was the dream of Tom Doddins to build one of the finest model villages in the country. You will find many instantly recognisable places, along with environmental, transportation and historical models which range from Neolithic times through Tudor and up to the present day. The 1/12 scale village is interspersed with an impressive collection of over 400 varieties of shrubs and dwarf conifers. Following the coastline from Babbacombe Bay, you find Thatched Rock. This is one of the limestone horns of Torbay. Berry Head is the other. Along the coastline from Thatched Rock to Daddy Head and around to Torquay are some spectacular views. This area is often overlooked by visitors. Torquay is at the heart of what is known as the English Riviera, which is hardly surprising when you see the Mediterranean-style villas with Italian-sounding names. Its modern shopping centre with classical-style architecture blends in well, and from this vantage point above the main street you could quite easily be somewhere in the south of France. Torquay is full of seaside fun, with lots of attractions. The red sandy beach becomes inaccessible at high tide, so there are lots of other amusements on hand, whether it be relaxing in one of the lovely landscape gardens, walking along the promenade, or visiting a show. marina is an important part of Torquay. Pleasure boats of all sizes navigate these waters, visiting the many isolated coves along the coast. The harbour is always a hive of activity. Cruise operators offer boat trips, fishing trips and even scuba diving from here. Abbey, one of Torquay's many interesting historical buildings, is now owned by Torquay Corporation. From 1196 it was an abbey for Premonstratensian canons until the dissolution of the monasteries in 1539. After that date it has had several owners until it was bought by the Careys family in 1665, who built the present mansion in the early 18th century. The house is now used as an art gallery and has a good collection of William Blake's work. As the night draws in, Torquay takes on a different look after another hot day in the sun. The moon shines high in the night sky as the coloured lights and neon signs light up the buildings along the promenade. Time stands still at Cockington Court, a pleasant mansion set in 287 acres of beautiful grounds. Horse-drawn carriages are on hand to take visitors to and fro from the mansion and village. Cockington Village is an interesting place to wander in beautiful surroundings. You will find a plentiful supply of tea and refreshment rooms and safe play areas for children. In the centre of the village there is an ancient forge, surrounded by other attractive buildings, such as the Drum Inn, designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens in 1934. Is definitely a family resort and has more sandy beaches than its neighbour, Torquay. The pier struts out majestically into the sea, laden with attractions for all the family, The red sand and eroded headland are familiar characteristics of the South Shores. Paignton's spacious esplanade is pedestrianised, although pedal cars and the occasional imitation steam train trundle past, and there is plenty of open space for ball games. The streets still retain their old charm, with the hustle and bustle of locals and visitors. A short walk from the town is the Paignton Railway, which has been here since 1973 and is kept in superb condition by Dart Valley Railway. The first stop the train makes is at Goodrington Sands, where you will find Key West Water Park, ideal for the adventurous with a head for heights. The beach here is more accessible at high tide and is only a short walk around the headland from Paignton. The train then makes its way to Kingswear, where you can catch the ferry to Dartmouth. Another surprise for Paignton's visitors is the luxurious mansion, Old Way, built in 1874 for the Singer family, the makers of the Singer sewing machine. Neo-classical pillars around the exterior prepare you for a sumptuous interior of marble staircases and painted walls and ceilings. The building is now owned by the council, and much of it is used as offices. The garden is also well worth a visit. Newton Abbot, situated at the head of the Tyne estuary, has for many years had the reputation of being a friendly market town, with a mix of high street stores and traditional market town shopping facilities. There are restaurants, bars, a cinema and a modern leisure centre. St Leonard's Tower is one of the most notable landmarks in Newton Abbot and is said to be unique in having a tower without a church. Originally there was a small chapel attached to the tower, but in 1836 it was decided to demolish the chapel, leaving only the tower, and a new St Leonard's Church was then built in Walborough Street. Ashburton, situated on the southern fringe of Dartmoor, dates back to Saxon times and has a wealth of historical buildings. It was one of only 4 stannary towns in Devon, and its past prosperity was based on the tin mining of Dartmoor and the woolen industry. Stannary towns were important centres for the trade of tin, as all rough smelted tin had to be stamped before it was taken away for smelting. In 1515, nearly 40% of Devon's tin was sold through Ashburton, but by the early 1700s the trade had almost died out. Ashburton's attractive town has many interesting shops, houses and corner buildings, several with slate-hung front elevations which are typical of this area. In the centre of the town, on the site of the Mermaid Inn, is a Gothic arch which was the headquarters of the Roundheads, and where General Fairfax stayed in 1646 during the Civil War. It is now, rather appropriately, an ironmonger's shop, The parish church of St Andrew is an impressive building with a magnificent 92-foot high tower. It was erected at the end of the 12th century and entirely rebuilt in the 15th. The excellent proportions outside are reflected in the interior. The rebuilding of the church was made possible by well-to-do members of the Tinners and Wool Merchants Guilds, both of which have guild chapels in the transepts. The South Devon Railway winds its way along the River Dart between Buckfastleigh and Totnes. Here you can see a wonderful collection of old steam engines and carriages, as well as the occasional diesel engine. At Buckfastleigh Station you will also find the Railway Museum, cafe and bookshop. Buckfastleigh village is a quiet place with narrow streets and was formerly a wool town. Around its edge are the large houses that once belonged to the mill owners. Totnes is another one of Devon's exceptional towns, perched on a hillside overlooked by the ruins of a Norman castle. The most notable building in Totnes is the East Gate, which spans across High Street. At the top of the street you will see the two covered pavement arcades of Butter Walk and Poultry Walk. In Tudor times the shops were open-fronted stalls with accommodation above, and the arcade offered protection from the sun and rain. Here again, on the front of some buildings, you can see the slate-hung elevations. On the lower side of Eastgate, which is now 4th Street, is an Elizabethan house containing the Totnes Museum. It has an unusual exhibition relating to early computers. Charles Babbage, the father of the British computer, spent most of his early life in Totnes. A little further down the street is the distinguished Georgian front of the mansion, now part of the King Edward VI School. There are lots of interesting buildings along 4th Street, such as this Gothic house, tucked up a little lane with a public right-of-way running right through it. St Mary's Church stands majestically in the centre of the town and was built in the 15th century with sandstone brought from Paynton. It has a superb collection of carvings. Behind the church you will find the Guildhall, built in 1533, which has, over the years, been used both as a school and a prison. The town council still holds meetings in the Guildhall today. At the bottom of 4th Street you come to Apple Wharf and the Mill Tail. Here you will find the old malt house and other warehouses that have now been converted into residential property. Totnes Bridge is the first bridging point over the River Dart, which gave Totnes its historical importance. The Georgian architect Charles Fowler, who also worked on the design of London's Covent Garden, designed the current bridge. Brixham nestles between limestone cliffs, with colourful cottages overlooking its harbour, and has a certain buzz about it. There is always plenty of activity around the harbour, whether from the pleasure boats that gather here over the summer, the coming and going of cruise boats taking day trippers around the scenic coastline, or the multitude of inshore fishing vessels. Brixham still maintains a thriving fishing industry, and boats of all sizes can be seen unloading their catch or sailing out to the waiting fishing grounds. As with many of the places visited in Devon, Brixham is no exception in that you will always find a comfortable cafe selling cream scones where you can sit and watch the world go by. Permanently moored in the harbour is a full-size replica of Sir Francis Drake's flagship, the Golden Hind. Drake was the first English navigator to sail around the world. An explorer and military leader, he raided Spanish shipping and became the greatest privateer of his time. He also played an important part in destroying the powerful Spanish Armada. The monument to William of Orange, King of England, Scotland and Ireland, stands on the quayside to commemorate his arrival here along with 15,000 men. He helped form the Grand Alliance and led England in its so-called Glorious Revolution, a bloodless revolution that deposed James II in favour of his daughter Mary II and her husband William III, Prince of Orange. There are many exhibitions and museums relating to the fishing industry. Brixham Museum holds a fascinating collection of tools, models and artefacts. Nearby, you can visit Berry Head Country Park, with its spectacular limestone cliffs carpeted with wild flowers, making it an ideal habitat for bird life. Also on top of the cliffs, and overlooking Tor Bay, are the remains of a Napoleonic fort, complete with cannons. This high vantage point makes an ideal lookout for the Coast Guard station to watch the coming and going of the many boats that pass this way. It is here that you will also find the tallest and the shortest lighthouse in Britain. At 191 feet above sea level, there is no higher, and being only a few foot tall, it is also the smallest. Kingswear is where the Paignton to Dartmouth railway ends, or begins, depending on how you look at it. Across the River Dart is the small town of Dartmouth, with the familiar sight of a marina. The steep bank along the river, crammed with colourful cottages, is part of the town's charm and appeal. Dartmouth, in the past, was the leading trading port in Devon, as it possessed deep and sheltered waters, allowing larger ships to enter. The estuary was also well protected by 2 castles near the entrance, and as an unusual defence in times of war, a chain was stretched across the river, blocking the entrance. The only way across the river is by the regular ferry service, which can sometimes cause a bottleneck at peak times, such as tea time, when visitors wish to return to their hotels. Before we cross the river, let's watch the Dartmouth train pull out of the station. You might like to cover your ears. The beautiful Tudor buildings with their timber frame panels, many twisted and distorted over time, but all carefully restored in every detail, are a lasting reminder of the prosperity Dartmouth has seen over the years. In the 1600s, to accommodate the growing trade, a muddy creek was filled in and the reclaimed land was named New Ground, some of which is occupied by the Royal Avenue Gardens and the many ticket offices selling boat trips up the Dart and along the coast. As you leave Dartmouth, take a look over your shoulder, as there is a dramatic change ahead. The stretched out sandy beach of Blackpool Sands lies before you, with a visiting clipper anchored offshore. Its soft sandy beach and amenities attract many visitors to this privately owned cove. The name Blackpool Sands probably derives from the word blag or black, which in Devon means holy or sacred, and the freshwater stream that forms a small pool nearby. Further down the A379, the road drops down to Slapton Sands, a 2.5-mile bank of shingle and pebbles, thrown up when the glaciers melted after the Ice Age. Trapped behind this pebble ridge is Devon's largest natural freshwater lake. Slapton Lea National Nature Reserve, owned by the Whitley Wildlife Trust, offers extensive courses throughout the year on the wildlife and habitat in the area. At the far end of the exposed bay is Tor Cross. This little village saw the practice for the D-Day landing in 1943. Live ammunition was used, and it went tragically wrong when hundreds of American troops were killed in the exercise. The Sherman tank stands as a memorial to the men that lost their lives. We are now making our way to Start Point. At Start Point, take a look back along the coast. Tor Cross, Blackpool Sands, Dartmouth and King's Weir. Start Point Lighthouse dates back to 1836. Its light has a range of 21 miles and is open to visitors Monday to Saturday. Prawl Point is Devon's most southerly point, and the views from here are spectacular. Start Point is just out of sight, but the view across the mouth of Salcombe Harbour to Bolt Head and out to the sea is breathtaking. Kingsbridge was once known as the capital of this part of Devon, as all roads converge here. The estuary at Kingsbridge is not fed by any large river, so it is technically a weir or flooded valley. A big weekly market was once held, and steamers ran between Kingsbridge and Plymouth, calling at Salcombe on the way to bring the many visitors to Kingsbridge. As you walk up Fore Street, you will see more of the slate cladding. Hidden behind many of these fascias are 15th and 16th century buildings. Further up the hill, you will find the old town hall, which now houses a theatre and community-run cinema. Next to this is the Shambles, with a granite pillared walkway where butchers would have hung their meat. In the old grammar school, you will find the Cookworthy Museum. William Cookworthy, the English discoverer of China clay, made the first English porcelain and lived in Kingsbridge. It is an interesting museum with exhibits relating to this historical market town. Everything from costumes to carts, complete with the old school range, where up to 60 meals could have been cooked for the pupils boarding here. In the walled garden you will also find agricultural machinery as well as Victorian plants. Looking down on the narrow estuary in Salcombe as it winds its way to Kingsbridge, you will see a multitude of bustling boats bobbing on the water. Everyone in Salcombe seems to be in the boat business. But after all, this is a sailing centre, a calling place for coastal cruising and a convenient one-day's journey from Dartmouth before moving on to the next port of call, Plymouth. Salcombe's historical claim to fame lay with her fleet of clippers and schooners, which always brought home the first fruits, from the pineapple pickings in the West Indies or the orange harvest in the Azores. Local trades are well portrayed in the Salcombe Museum of Maritime and Local History at Custom House Quay. Fishing is a popular sport here. Children especially like crab catching, that is if they can get the line off their dad. South Sands is another enticing beach that can be seen across the harbour. Small ferry boats will take you across the estuary throughout the day. From Salcombe, there is a 6-mile coastal walk around Bolt Head along the Bolt Trail, taking you to Hope Cove along breathtaking coastal scenery. Hope Cove, a miraculously preserved piece of Devon, nestled between a mixture of sandy beaches and low rocky cliffs, forms a safe haven for bathers. There are 2 small shops and a pub serving food here, which makes this an ideal place for a quiet family holiday. From Salcombe to Bigbury-on-Sea and Burr Island, you will pass through some attractive scenery. Burr Island is separated from the mainland by a small stretch of sand, which at high tide becomes cut off by the sea. On the island is a hotel that has now been converted to holiday flats. Bigbury-on-Sea's stretched out sandy beaches with its seaside shops and restaurants attract lots of visitors. We have now joined the busy A379 at Modbury, with its Georgian elegance which surprises the first-time visitor. The front elevations are typical of this area. We now enter the port of Plymouth, most notable for its maritime and naval connections, both past and present, although pleasure boats and cruises are also an important industry for Plymouth today. The wide and deep harbour makes it an ideal place for large ships to anchor and dock. The panoramic view from the Hoe down onto the waters of Plymouth Sound, where the boats bob and skip in the water, is a good place to start your tour of the city. Perched on top of the Hoe is Smeaton's Tower, the old Eddystone Rock lighthouse that was rebuilt here after it was replaced by Douglas's present lighthouse. The tower is open to the public and you are invited to climb to the top. Also on the Hoe is an impressive statue of Sir Francis Drake. Drake served an apprenticeship as a mariner and at the young age of 27 was given his first command, the Judith. There are also statues dedicated to the role played by the Royal Air Force in the defence of Plymouth during the Blitz. Plymouth's prosperous past can be seen by the stunning Georgian houses overlooking West Hoe Park. These would probably have been owned by the shipbuilders of the area. Armada Way, heading towards the town centre, you will find the massive anchor that once belonged to the Ark Royal. A little further on is the Guildhall. Apparently the 13th floor of the tower gives panoramic views in all directions. In World War II it was heavily hit by bombs, although it has now been restored. There are elaborate carvings along the north wall which are worth seeing. St Andrew's Church is the largest parish church in the country. It also was badly damaged by heavy bombing, and for many years was used as a garden church, as only the outer wall remained. The restoration of the church was completed in 1957. Before proceeding to the old part of Plymouth, you can use the underpass to continue along Armada Way and into the shopping centre. The tiled mosaic here depicts the history of the town, and the pedestrianised shopping centre has all the main high street stores you would expect in a major city. Pryston House is the oldest building in Plymouth. The first records date the building back to 1490, although it is suspected to be much older. The Merchant's House in St Andrews Street is the best example of how a well-to-do merchant would have lived in the 16th century. The 4-storey townhouse is now a museum of Plymouth's early history. Blackfriars Distillery chimney stands tall above Southside Street. Coates Gin Company incorporated with the Friary in 1793. Gin is still made here, and there is an exhibition centre. Southside Street is a pleasant, busy street with a variety of shops selling second-hand books, antiques, prints and gifts. There are also several restaurants and public houses. Behind these shops in Key Road you will find this enormous mural by the local artist Robert Lenkiewicz. Sutton Harbour is a lively part of Plymouth with lots of fishing boats. You will find many attractions here, including the National Marine Aquarium. At the entrance to Sutton Harbour, you will find the Mayflower Stone, one of several memorials marking great events in this area. The Union Jack and the Stars and Stripes fly over a memorial marking the departure of the Pilgrim Fathers in 1620 from this point. Across the road is Island House, which dates back to 1590. On the side wall you will see the plaque with the names of the pilgrims who sailed on the Mayflower. Behind Island House is an attractive cobbled road called New Street. It is often overlooked by visitors, and its many listed buildings make it an interesting place to stroll. waterfront by the Mayflower Stone is a good place to board one of the many boat trips around the harbour, passing through Plymouth Sound and enabling you to see how big Plymouth Harbour is. On the west of the harbour is Drake's Island, with its fortification to protect the inner harbour. As well as its military occupation, the island has been used as a prison and a youth training camp. At the rear of the disused barracks of the Royal William Yard, the River Tamar opens out as it winds its way through the dockyards to Devonport. Distance out of Plymouth, the scenery changes to the open moorlands of Dartmoor. If you take the turning on the right, it leads you to Burrator Reservoir, by far the most beautiful on Dartmoor. It was built in 1898 to solve Plymouth's water problems and was increased in size in 1928. Dartmoor's rainfall is almost 4 times the annual rainfall of London, which gives birth to the many streams and rivers on Dartmoor. From the car park beside the dam, there are many delightful walks on National Trust land, through woods, and up the breezy summit to the legendary Sir Francis Drake's Leat, which supplied Plymouth with a clean and reliable supply of water. Drake's Leat served the town well for a few centuries, until a more reliable source was sought. It could be argued that when people think of Dartmoor, it is the prison at Princetown that they picture. Every year thousands of visitors come to gaze at the drab grey buildings known as HM Prison Dartmoor. It was built by French prisoners of war captured in the Napoleonic Wars, and when completed was populated by 7,000 prisoners and 500 troops. Needless to say, conditions were grim. The last prisoners of war left in 1816, and the prison was left unused for almost half a century. For a short time it was used as a factory. However, when Australia refused to accept any more English convicts, a prison was re-established. Princetown itself is an isolated town set in a bleak and sometimes inhospitable landscape, about 16 miles from Plymouth. The town came about as a result of the prison, on land owned by the then Prince of Wales. The oldest building in the town is the slate-hung hostelry, the Plume of Feathers, predating the prison. Of equal interest is Princetown Church, started in 1810 by the French. Dartmoor was declared a national park in 1951 and covers an area of 368 square miles. Its history goes back nearly 400 million years. Man has exploited the land in many ways, and the end result is the moor that we love today. Post Bridge, for many people, is the centre of Dartmoor. This clapper bridge is one of the finest to be found on the moor. Clapper is the old name for a heap of stones. This is a good place to begin a walk up the West Dart Valley to Wistman's Wood. Deep in the heart of the moors, you will find many of the old tin workings, one of Dartmoor's oldest and most extensive industries. The valleys are full of the remains of over 800 years of tin working. The first record of the Golden Dagger mine is from the 1850s, and it was the last working tin mine on Dartmoor. The surviving structure dates from the 19th or early 20th century. The tin ore was crushed and cleaned on the site, but would not have been smelted here. There are many places you can see granite in England, but the examples on Dartmoor are quite remarkable. With more than 200 tours of various shapes and sizes, it's not surprising that the moors are visited by thousands every year. These great ancient rocks would appear to have some form of magnetic fascination, as families flock to climb and scramble over tors such as Hay Tor, Hound Tor and Sharp Tor. These three all have well-worn paths leading to them. The term Logan stone refers to slabs of granite or lumps of stone which are so precariously balanced that they will rock or pivot on their point of balance. Therefore, a small amount of pressure can often make a boulder of many tons rock most alarmingly. However, many of the recognised Logans on Dartmoor have lost their point of balance and no longer rock. Several, like the one on Ripon Tor, have been spoilt. Hay Tor Rock is located on the eastern side of Dartmoor with commanding views. Hound Tor provided the inspiration for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's book Hound of the Baskervilles. The tor was actually used as a location when making the film. Dartmeet is a famous beauty spot where the East and West Dart rivers come together amidst magnificent scenery. Just upstream from the road bridge are the flood-damaged remains of another ancient clapper bridge. The age of this primitive bridge is impossible to determine, but it is probably 700 or 800 years old. Travelling through the village of Pondworthy towards Widdicombe in the Moor, you will see the church spire of St Pancras rising in the distance, a distinctive feature in the landscape for miles around. The church is the finest on the moor, and its tall tower of noble proportions can be attributed to the prosperity of the tin mining industry. Next to the church is Church House, originally built to serve as a rest house for the parishioners from far-flung parts of the parish. It is now owned by the National Trust and used as an information centre and shop. The village green was formerly called Butt Park, as this was the field where the young men practised archery, using a water butt as the target. A local law was passed that every township's inhabitants had to shoot at every feast day, and if they failed to do so, were fined half a penny. Becky Falls Woodland Estate, situated 4 miles from Bovey Tracy, has been much loved since Victorian times. It is a secluded moorland valley set in 60 acres of woodland with walks along Becker Brook, ranging from gentle, easy walks to the surprise trail for the fit and agile. There is a superb restaurant and gift shop, and don't miss the pet's garden with all its animals. Approaching Moreton Hampstead from Post Bridge along its narrow streets gives you a wonderful view over the housetops. Situated at the north end of the moor, this interesting little town is stocked with antique and ceramic shops. Moreton Hampstead is notable for the fine arcaded stone almshouses at the top of Cross Street, which are beautifully preserved, dating back to 1637. Nearby is the elm, called the Dancing Tree. The original tree had a large platform built in its branches, and it is said that there was room for 30 people to sit, 6 couples to dance, and room for a small orchestra. The church at Moreton Hampstead is well worth investigating. Lynmouth is possibly most known for the terrible floods in August 1952. 9 inches of rain fell in the space of 24 hours, and the surge of water down the east and west Lynn rivers was so great that trees, bridges, houses, and even the harbour itself were washed away. 34 people died and 39 buildings were damaged. 50 years on, the village has been beautifully restored. There is an exhibition centre by the quay telling the full story of the flood. Linton sits majestically on the hill above Lynmouth and is very different in character, with its elegant buildings interspersed with interesting alleys and corners. The best way to travel between Linton and Lynmouth is by the water-operated Cliff Railway, built in 1890. The 2 connected cable cars shuttle up and down the hill, powered by water. Under each car is a water tank, which is filled when the carriage reaches the top. The now heavier car makes a controlled descent to the bottom of the hill, where the water is released and the process starts again. The sheltered cove of Combe Martin, a few miles south of Lynmouth, has a soft shingle beach. Some of the small fishing boats available for hire can be found here. At low tide, the layered rocks reveal rock pools and caves to be explored, surrounded by safe current-free waters. The coastal path from Combe Martin offers hours of enjoyable walks, and the local bus service provides an alternative return journey from the many places of interest. Ilfracombe was once the leading resort in North Devon. Many of the visitors would travel by boat to Ilfracombe from Minehead, Clovelly, Lundy and Bristol, to name but a few. Old photographs show paddle steamers moored in the harbour, but sadly only a few pleasure cruisers still survive. The week-long celebrations held in June transforms the town back to the Victorian era, and the whole town dresses in costume. promenade, with its wide walkways intersected with beautiful colourful gardens, is a popular place to spend some time. You can take a ride on the ornamental train or enjoy a game of crazy golf. The Landmark Theatre, with its striking architecture, is North Devon's newest arts, crafts and entertainment centre, with a theatre seating capacity approaching 500. The cinema, also housed here, screens all the latest releases. The view from the back of the theatre along the coast and across the shingle beach towards the moored boats in the distance is far removed from the hustle and bustle of Tarada Bay. Offers unspoilt sandy beaches and is a perfect resting place for any sun worshipper. The beach is tidal, so access is restricted at high tide and parking is limited. There are plenty of hotels and bed and breakfasts along with local shops and amenities, offering entertainment, souvenirs and refreshments. As well as the beach, there are many other attractions. Woolacombe Bay is also North Devon's premier surf resort and attracts surfers from all around the world in the season. Cobbled streets of Clovelly are as distinctive as the shambles in York, although very much steeper. Cottage garden plants, tenderly cared for by the residents, line the beautifully preserved street. Due to the gradient of the street, motor vehicles are not allowed in Clovelly village, and all deliveries have to be manhandled down the hill and all waste removed in the same way. 300 feet above the harbour is Clovelly Visitors Centre, which has an audio-visual presentation about the village's history and the fame and fortune that came from the once great mackerel and herring shoals that swam in the waters along this North Devon coast. Sadly, the fish have gone, and the village now relies on tourism to help maintain and preserve this small but ancient community. Clovelly was also the childhood home of the Victorian author Charles Kingsley. The village inspired him to write his enduring children's classic, The Water Babies. We hope that our video has shown you some of the many reasons why Devon is one of Britain's most popular holiday regions. The unspoiled beauty and tremendous variety of scenery, the wealth of places of historical interest and huge range of things to see and do make Devon a wonderful place to visit. Our task has been to try and give you a representative selection from this large county with so much to offer. We hope you have enjoyed it.